I met him when I was in medical school at Vanderbilt University, and he was the intern on the internal medicine team. I was the medical student. There were a lot of bright people at Vanderbilt. The caliber of my fellow students and of the residents that worked there was just really stellar. And Nick stood out even in that kind of a crowd. He was sharp, he was quick, he was truly brilliant. His ability to remember information that he'd read many years before, his quickness at answering any kind of question. He was always at the top of his game. He was truly brilliant, and I think anyone who knew him knows that. He was very successful in more than one field. He had started off as a journalist working for Time magazine back in the early 70s when Time magazine was many times thicker than it is now, I do believe. And he had been successful as a journalist, but then he got interested in medicine because of people that he had interviewed and decided to go back to school to eventually become a medical researcher. I miss the scientific dialogue, you know, having a partner, somebody to talk to about cases. I miss his perspectives. I definitely miss his writing and his, you know, being able to work together on that aspect of things, because the way that we typically would work, he would be the writer and I would be the editor. And so now I need to be both the writer and the editor. Now, Nick always told me that writing is editing and that the first draft is always bad. And in fact, he would always review things multiple times before he would show it to me. But for me, I don't tend to have the same passion to get the information out there that he would have. And so it's more a question of sitting down and choosing to be inspired at a given moment as opposed to having the inspiration naturally. Nick always had something to say, and I don't always have something to say. And so, not that there aren't important things to be said, but just in terms of getting the material out there, I think I miss that passion about him. He was the one that always watered the plants on Friday afternoon, and in our old office we had lots of plants, and here, some of them are still with me down here, but one of the things about him is that he was absolutely resistant to any idea that any of the plants ever needed to be trimmed. So in his office there were these 3 plants that literally had not been repotted in 20 years because I was afraid to, because they were enormous as it stood. So if they had had more soil to work with, they might have taken over the office. And they were growing like all over the place. Some of the shots of him for professional shots, you can see those plants in the background, and it always would make me laugh because they would be literally going in all directions because he would not let me trim them. So I actually was unable to water the plants myself while we were still up there. I got one of the staff to do it because it just upset me too much. It made me think of him with his with a little watering pot and a towel trooping around watering all the plants. It was part of his way of winding down on Friday afternoons. All of his patients, I think, were just devastated because he had a way of really developing very close relationships with many of them. Many of them really considered him to be a friend, not just a doctor. I especially felt sad for the ones that were older than he was. You know, there were some, like, for instance, a few days after his death, I saw a patient of his who was originally diagnosed with metastatic melanoma, and it's truly astonishing that the woman is alive. But she's 90 years old, and you know, she would have never expected to outlive Nick. He was 67 when he passed away. It was just very, very hard for some of those people. Some of the other things, the things that I truly admired about Nick was really his determination. He encountered the work of Dr. Kelly, who was doing astonishing things with nutritional programs in cancer back in the 1970s. And once Nick discovered that work, he realized that it was his mission to try to gather scientific data to support it, because he felt like it was something that could be helpful to people, and there was no one else to do the work. And once he became convinced of that, there was really no stopping him. There were times that he had very little money, very few resources. He would always manage to figure out a way to make things work. He had other job offers, he had other paths that he could have followed, but he never chose that. He always lived by his principles and by what he believed was right. And that's the kind of person that inspires other people to do likewise. That's why I'm continuing to do the work that we've done together over the years. So that's what I remember when I think of him. It's, I guess, in the radio interview that I did, the day that I learned he had passed away on July the 22nd of last year, I said that it's hard to believe that he's gone, because it's like having a force of nature stop, like somebody telling you that the north wind isn't going to blow anymore. And that's still how I feel. It's very hard to believe he's no longer with us. And yet, I think that the spirit of what he did will live on, and I think that my hope is that by continuing to do the work that he devoted his life to, that his legacy will live on with me.